make themselves visible, that's great. So our topic is, gosh, it's as deep as you can make it. And I can see Kokila, thank you. Oh, I did for a moment and now. Okay. So yes, Nectar of Instruction. I'm showing you this. It's an old UK edition from the I think the late 70s, about 1977 or 8. We printed actually a beautiful trilogy. It was called The Art of Living, and it contained the Nectar of Instruction, the Śrī Rūpa and Krishna consciousness, perfection of yoga. 3 little books. I think we sold millions of them on the street. So lots of people in this country got this copy of the Nectar of Instruction. By the way, can everyone hear me clearly and see me clearly? If you can, put your thumb up. Okay, great. 2 thumbs. So that's the copy which I have, but some of you may have the original BBT edition. It was published in 1975. I didn't really hear much about it, and then one day in my room in the old Berry Place Temple, I came across a sheet of like manuscripts, unpublished manuscripts, and it was Nectar of Instruction. And I thought, wow, what's this? It's a book of Prabhupada's, which I'd not heard of. And a few months later, it came out. And the Nectar of Instruction contains, I think, 11 verses. It's very short. And Prabhupada wrote a short preface, which gives a background. So I want us to just look at that before we look at text number 3, which is our intention. But first of all, let's just sing a few verses here. Oh, I can see Andrea. Thank you for having your camera on, Andrea. Oh, you just turned it off. It's on again. Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Jai Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, all of you, for your company. See Balaram there also now. So last time, a month ago, I think it was, I was asked by Padmanabha to speak about Prahlad Maharaj. But this time he said to me, what would you like to speak about? And at the time I happened to be reading the Nectar of Instruction and really appreciating Rūpa Gosvāmī's words. So I said, oh, okay, I'll take a verse from the Nectar of Instruction. Now, for those of you, some of you may be familiar with the Nectar of Instruction, some not. These 11 verses. Rūpa Gosvāmī begins at the he begins with a very definitive instruction about proper life, how to live, controlling your senses, essentially. And it's quite, I always found it, quite a demanding, quite a severe sort of opening instruction. And he qualified it by saying that only people who can do all of this, who can completely control their senses from A to Z, basically, are qualified to teach. Well, I think that's, well, okay. Only they are qualified to make disciples, which is really gives one pause for thought. Because, of course, at the time when Prabhupada gave us this book, his translation and commentary, he was the only person outside of India, the only person we knew about, who was making disciples. So, of course, the history of Krishna consciousness since that time, many people stepped forward in a spirit of service to accept disciples after Prabhupada had left us, and did their best, and some of them did, should we say, better than others, in this department of sense control. Anyway, luckily that's not the topic of today's talk, because it's a challenging one, but it's one that Prabhupada had no difficulty to hold forth about, because his amazing capacity to be completely self-controlled allowed him to say anything to anyone. So those of us who are on the journey, these are things we need to be aware of, but I'm always slightly reluctant to give demanding instructions when it comes to self-control, because I think it's a lifetime's journey, and hopefully, well, it may not end with the end of this life. It may be an ongoing journey, but we try, and we'll see. That's the important thing. We'll come to that in our. So I've chosen anyway the third verse, and I've made a few screen. Actually, you'll just have to bear with me for a moment, because I've got to. How do I do this? I've just got to find the file. I was all in a bit of a last-minute rush. So it's going to be, yeah, I hope. And open recent, there it is. And that goes, right, so now I've actually forgotten, what do I do to show this to you? I'm sorry.
It's okay. There's a menu that comes up, and there's a green button called Share Screen.
Ah, yes, I can see it. So I click on that.
Yeah, and if you have any, videos you want to be sharing with sound, people might need to hear the sound. There's a button on the left saying "Share your computer sound."
Okay, there's not going to be any sound involved.
Okay.
So
then you can just share your
just...
display or your desktop. Yep, it started. Yep, you can see how to succeed in devotional service.
Okay, so now I'm just going to fill the screen with that. Hold on, view, enter full screen. Right. Good. So yeah, this third verse, after Rupa Gosvāmī begins with the warning about the control of the senses, and then his second verse, he lists 6 things that will destroy your devotional service. So he's sort of beginning with the warnings and the things not to do. One, his verse number 2, he says, one's devotional service is spoiled when one becomes too entangled in the following 6 activities. So that's a very interesting verse, interesting discussion. But what we're looking at is verse number 3, and here it is. I'll read the translation. There are 6 principles favorable to the execution of pure devotional service. And then he lists them. Being enthusiastic, endeavoring with confidence, being patient, acting according to regulative principles, and Prabhupada inserts, such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna. Number 5, abandoning the association of non-devotees. And number 6, following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. These 6 principles undoubtedly assure the complete success of pure devotional service. So what I always do when teaching is I like to look at the Sanskrit. Rupa Gosvāmī did write this 11-verse poem in Sanskrit. Utsahan Nischayat, and we're going to chant this together in a moment. Utsahan Nischayat Daryat, which means Utsahan is enthusiasm. Ut means rising, so sort of rising and being active. Utsahan. Nischayat is having confidence, and Daryat is patience. So these are the first 3 qualities: enthusiasm, confidence, and patience. And we're going to go through and ponder on each of these. And then the second line, which Prabhupada translates as acting according to regulative principles. What Rupa Gosvāmī actually says is tat karma pravartanat, which means performing all kinds of activities. Very key feature of Krishna consciousness is it means, staying active. And then the third line, Sangha Tyagat. Sangha Tyagat means give up the wrong kind of association. Sangha Tyagat just means giving up association. But in this instance, in this context, Sangha means, common association, giving that up. And Sato Rite means find those who are truthful. Sata means truthful. And Rite means follow them, follow in their footsteps. And so Prabhupada translates Sato as the great previous acharyas. But it's not just confined to that, it's those who are truthful. And then the final line, he said, if you adopt these 6 practices, sadhvir, by these 6, bhakti prasidyati, your devotional service will progress. And Prabhupada says it will become successful. So let's sing these 4 lines. I'll sing each line and you can repeat it after me, and we'll do it a couple of times. Tat karma pravartanat. Tat karma pravartanat. Sangha tyagat saturite. Sangha tyagat saturite. Sadhvir bhakti prasidhyati. Sadhvir bhakti prasidhyati. Sing it again. Utsaha nishchayataya. Utsaha nishchayataya. Tata karma pravartanat. Tata karma pravartanat. Sangha tyagat saturite. Sangha tyagat saturite. Sadhvir bhakti prasidhyati. Sadhvir bhakti prasidhyati. Enthusiasm, confidence, and patience. All kinds of favorable activity. Giving up the company of those who are not devotees, while following in the footsteps of those who are truthful. By these 6 devotional activities and service, your journey will be successful. I hope Rupa Gosvāmī will, I'm sure he likes to hear his poetry sung. And of course, this poem is beginning with very practical things. I'm going to go back to the full screen where I can find. Oh gosh, I can't find my. Oh, there it is. My mouse. Now, how do I do this? Escape. And then click on here. Oh gosh. Sorry, the technology here is defeating me a little bit. I'm trying to.
Go to view options at the top.
Oh, thank you.
And exit full screen. No. You know where right at the top.
Yes, I'm there.
Are you trying to exit the share screen?
Well, I have exited the shared screen, and I've just got a tiny little box in a really small one. I don't know why it's gone so small. Let's see, window. Sorry about this. Oh, I'm in the wrong program. I have to go back to Safari. I'm just looking at this tiny little square about the size of my thumb.
Yeah, it's the other screen, I think.
Ah, okay. Now I've got still a small square. I'll just have to somehow expand it to fill the screen. Ah, okay. Here it comes. I'm there now. I'm back.
Okay.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Oh, good. All right. Well, that's the important thing. Right. So now I have to rediscover my train of thought. Yes, Rupa has started with this very practical opening, but as these verses unfold, he starts to go deeper and deeper into the whole experience of Krishna consciousness until he actually enters the spiritual world. And by the time we get to the 9th, 10th, and 11th verses, he has taken us to the spiritual world completely beyond this limited world here. But it begins, all of this journey, it begins in a very practical way. So in his commentary, Prabhupada has, well, the first thing he wants to stress on us before he goes into the details is he mentions this basic principle of devotional service. Let me just read some of his words. He begins by quoting from Rupa Gosvāmī in the Nectar of Devotion, a sort of a definitive verse which defines the whole process of devotional service and begins with the Sanskrit words Anya Vilasita Sunyam, which means without any other distraction. Rupa Gosvāmī sort of defines devotional service. He calls it Uttama Bhakti, the highest kind of devotion. And the first characteristic is that it's free from any extraneous motive. Not seeking to get anything other than to give my service to Krishna, and particularly Rupa, he particularly says, Jnana Kamadi Anavritam, not seeking knowledge and not seeking fruit of, the fruits of my work, only wishing to give. And I remember when I, as a very new devotee, when I first heard people speaking about this, of, having no motive other than to serve, I thought to myself, that is completely idealistic, and nobody can be like that. It's impossible. That was the thought. How can one possibly give up all personal desires and just surrender oneself totally? How can that be? I was listening the other day to an old friend of mine, in the Prabhupada Memories series, which I've just managed to buy. I just bought the stick with every Prabhupada memory on it. There's about 80 of them. I bought it from Siddhanta in California. Very, very reasonably priced, if any of you are interested. Anyway, it just arrived. And the second or third episode, it featured a devotee called Narayan. Now, I know Narayan very well. He's American, extremely in the classic, not in a bad way, but he's a very passionate man. And he's an artist and a sculptor, and he gets lots of stuff done. Probably still, even though now he'll be in his mid-70s, I would imagine. But when I first met him in London in 1971, he came across to build a Rathayatra car. And we had an exciting, let's put it this way, our relationship was exciting. Sometimes it was quite grueling because he was so passionate, but he did so much service, and he's still doing so much service for Prabhupada. So he had this amazing memory of being in Prabhupada's company, sitting in Prabhupada's room. He was very worried because he knew, he used to often get into sort of conflict with other devotees and struggle in general, but deeply sincere man. So he was worrying, and he said he went in to see Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was chanting his japa, walking up and down. This is in Bury Place, in the old temple in Bloomsbury. And Narayan sat on the floor, not really knowing how to compose. He had this burning question. And at first, Prabhupada just more or less ignored him and just walked up and down with his bead bag. And then he turned to him and said, yes. And so Narayan said to him, somehow he got it out, his question. He said, Prabhupada, is there any possibility that I will ever be able to become, a Krishna conscious person and, get free of all of this? So he said that Prabhupada at first, he didn't answer. He just, and he was walking up and down with his japa bag. And then after some time, he turned to Narayan and he said, well, you're in the process. And then he chanted a bit more and he said, it will take some time. It will take some time. So I'm just reflecting on, this ideal of total surrender, which is what is laid out right at the beginning of the Bhagavatam. Verse number 2, those two opening verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam are just, they're concentrated in those two verses as the whole wisdom of the Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada wrote sort of 10 pages commentary on each of them. So the second verse, the Bhagavatam says, this Purana rejects all motivations. Actually, I've got it right here. Let me just remind myself and remind you the actual wording. Yeah. This beautiful Bhagavatam oh no, here we go. So, the highest truth, and now I'm getting confused. The Sanskrit says, Mahamuni Krite Kimva Hare Ishvara. Vyasadeva, the great Muni, he compiled this Bhagavatam, and Kimva Hare Ishvara, there is no need, for anything other than this. Well, I'm on the spot now, and I can't find the words, but what the Bhagavatam says is it completely rejects all other motivations than complete surrender. That's what distinguishes the Bhagavatam and the whole Bhagavat tradition, actually. So many religious teachings are to be found in the world, but what is unique about the Bhagavat tradition is this rejecting of all other motive. So, back in 1971, me and Narayan, we were making drawings for Prabhupada's plans for the temple in Mayapur. And it was stormy. There were disagreements and there were passion, there were, outbursts and all kinds of things. So I can totally understand, he was because he's such a sincere man. And so he asked Prabhupada this question, and Prabhupada said, well, it will take some time. And that's what happens in devotional service. It takes some time, and eventually, gradually, we're saying, step by step, all other extraneous matters are taken away. And that's how Prabhupada opens his commentary. He says that Rūpa Gosvāmī has defined the process of devotional service, Uttama Bhakti, the highest devotion, as being free from any extraneous motives. And then Prabhupada makes the comment. He says, Bhakti is a sort of cultivation. And I really like that choice of word. Prabhupada, one of the things I learned about him is that he never put a word kind of by accident. He had a very profound knowledge, actually, of the English language. And so he's used this word cultivation. And pondering on that, he says, devotional service is a sort of cultivation. As soon as we say cultivation, he says, we must refer to activity. Cultivation of spirituality does not mean sitting idly for meditation. He says, this may be okay for some, insofar as it's a way to stop them doing materialistic things. But meditation stops all nonsensical activities, at least for the time being. However, devotional service, he says, not only puts an end to nonsensical activities, but engages us in meaningful activities. So this word cultivation, and it just reminds me of, cultivating, to grow fruits and flowers and to grow food. It requires time and patience and dedication. You don't see the result straight away. You keep watering the plant and you look after the garden. And over a period of time, the results come. So devotional service is like that. that it may not happen all at once. It may take time, just as Prabhupada said to Narayana. You practice this process, and in due course of time, the results will come. And then before he proceeds to look at the verse in question, Prabhupada then goes on to say that this practice, and by the way, at this point, I should just pause to say to you all that it really helps to enliven the next sort of hour and a half to have a little bit of two-way, you know. If any of you have a thought that you want to share, it can be a question, but it doesn't have to be a question. It can be an experience that you're reminded of, you know, then I would love to hear your own sort of reactions. And I'll pause 2 or 3 times in the course of the next hour or so we can have a bit of to and fro. In fact, I've just noticed that now I'm getting the hang of this. All of you have got your microphones off, which I understand because you might want to cough or whatever. But I can see that Ian Roberts' microphone is on. Am I right, Ian?
Ranchor.
Is that an indication that you have something to say?
Well, may I just make a comment very briefly, Ranchor?
Please.
I was really struck, Prabhu, in Srila Prabhupada quotes this verse from the Nectar of Instruction in the purport, in one of his purports in the 6th chapter of the Gita. And as I recall, he says that we should be confident that if we patiently follow the practice without deviation, we should be confident that we'll get the result. But then he tells a story about a little bird. Ranchor, do you recall that story about the little bird that loses its eggs to the ocean?
Yes, please share it with us.
Well, I was hoping you might tell it, Ranchor. It just struck me. I mean, it's a story that Srila Prabhupada talks when he's making exactly the point that you make. You know, we can be sure of success if we patiently practice. And you just mentioned, you know, if we put in the time and the patience and the dedication, we'll get the results. And of course, it struck me that's exactly the point Srila Prabhupada makes in the purport to first chapter. I think it's chapter 6, 24, I think. Yeah,
I've always loved the painting that illustrates that story when Garuda appears on the beach and spreads his wings and says to the ocean, "You better return the little sparrow's nest or I'm going to get involved." And is it in his, is it there that Prabhupada says God helps those who help themselves? Does he say that? Does that ring a bell to you?
Yeah, he says God will surely help those who help themselves.
Yeah. So, you know, this is going to come up in the next hour or so. This is a theme of, you know, the practice of Krishna consciousness, that we try the best we can, but we're not alone. We're being constantly helped. We're being helped by Guru and by God, both, in all kinds of ways. And Prabhupada told us, if you take one step towards Krishna, Krishna will take 10 steps towards you. So Prabhupada was, you know, he was very confident that he had taught us this process, tat karma pravasanat, doing all kinds of activities in the service of Krishna, as Rupa Gosvāmī says. And Prabhupada taught us how to do that. And so now he mentions the 9 processes of devotional service, which by divine coincidence, we talked about those last time, because those are given to us by Prahlad. Beginning with Shravanam, hearing. So there is this variety The practice of Krishna consciousness, as Prabhupada introduced it, is full of variety. And so he, in discussing this now, Prabhupada draws attention to the first process, hearing. So the 9, just to clarify, the 9 processes are hearing, chanting, remembering, serving, worshipping, offering obeisances, acting as a servant, making friends with the Lord, and finally surrendering everything. So these are the 9 processes. But it all begins with hearing. And this is something that has struck me enormously. Recently I've been going through the Bhagavatam from the beginning and teaching verse by verse. And it is so abundantly clear that the Bhagavatam, the main thing the Bhagavatam wants to tell us is hear. Practice hearing. And when Rupa Gosvāmī, in the verse we just chanted, when he says, Sato Vrite, following the ones who are truthful, he's principally referring to hearing. We have to find those who have the truth and hear from them. So we'll look at that a bit more in a moment. But, well, no, we'll look at it now, because Prabhupada says, Shravanam, hearing, is the first step in acquiring transcendental knowledge. And he says one should not give oral reception to unauthorized persons, but one should approach the proper person. It seems to me that's sort of more and more of a challenge I don't know, there's just that feeling a little bit in today's world. There's an awful lot of people who want to give us an awful lot of opinions about this, that, and the other. But are they, the question is there in the back of my mind, are these people actually qualified to speak? I have a recollection when I was an art student. I was 19. And my girlfriend there was an Indian guru who had arrived in London. And she said, she showed me the leaflet. She said, let's go and listen to this man. I'm not sure I can remember his name, but what I mainly remember about him is that they had put posters of him up on the tube. And in the posters, there was this big picture of this smiling man. And underneath it he said, I was Krishna, I was Rama, I was Buddha, I was Christ. Now I am Bhagavan Soham. That was his name. So my girlfriend showed me this and she said, let's go and listen to him. And I said, I'm not going to go and listen to that man. Why will I listen to somebody who claims to be Krishna and Buddha and Jesus? You know, that person does not inspire any confidence for me at all. So I'm glad that when I encountered Prabhupada, my response, of course, was not the same. It's a question of, it's a blessing really, isn't it? It's Krishna's mercy upon us to bring us to the right person and to inspire, as Krishna says in the Gita, I give faith. That's one of the things Krishna gives. And if you want to, if there's somebody else, you want to give your worship to, I'll help you do that. But if you want me, Krishna says, I will inspire you and give you faith. So Prabhupada underlines this, that we must find an authorized person. And he cites a beautiful verse, and I want us to look at this verse together. It's from Lord Chaitanya's teachings to Rupa Gosvāmī. Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagyavan Jiva. So I'm just going to go through this rigmarole again. Hopefully it's going to work. I'm going to share this verse with you. Let's see. Okay. Before looking at this verse, here's another verse from the beginning of the Bhagavatam. I hope you can all see it.
You just have to click on the share screen again, I think.
Oh dear. Oh gosh, again, we're going to have... Sorry, I do apologize. I'm not very practiced at all this. Now I've...
It's just the green button at the bottom, you know, on this screen. On the Zoom screen, sorry.
Yeah, it's, I don't even know what's happened to my Zoom screen. It's just bad.
Yeah, normally there's two Zoom screens. One where your video will be, and the one is
okay. Now I found
the link.
I found it. Yes. So I have to click on shared screen. Sorry about this. I'll get the hang of it by the time we finish. Share, right? And what I want to show you is...
Yeah, that's brilliant. We can see it now.
You can see it. Oh, great. Now the thing is, the trouble is I can't talk, because all I can see is all of you. Anyway, if I just move that to the side, that's better actually, because then I can find it again. Right. So this is a verse from the beginning of the Bhagavatam. Again, it's this early section of the Bhagavatam which lays everything out. But the reason I've singled this out is because Prabhupada, can you see, can everyone see this? That line 3, Ahaituki apratihata, is that showing, Pavana?
Yes.
Great.
I can see it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So that line, Ahaituki apratihata, Prabhupada used that line constantly in his conversations, in his teachings. He would endlessly be referring to those two words. That, and this is at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, Sutta Gosvāmī has been asked, okay, tell us, what's the best thing the best occupation? And so here is his response. The supreme occupation for all humanity is that which attains loving devotional service to the Lord. Yato bhaktir adhoksaje. Whatever will bring you to loving service to the Lord. And then he says, ahaituki aprahita. It must be causeless and unbroken. Yayatma suprasidati. That will completely satisfy the self. So again, that's the sort of a foundation for everything really that we're doing now. But what I wanted to share with you is now the next. I hope it's going to be the next. Yes. Now this beautiful verse, which Prabhupada refers us to, can you see it? The Brahmanda Brahmite Kona.
Yes.
Yes, it's there, Prabhu.
It's there. Great. When he starts teaching Rupa, Lord Chaitanya, he says this. He says, he's already described how this world is full of eternal jivas, living beings. And then he says, these jivas, they're wandering throughout the universe. And Prabhupada, in his explanation, he says they're going up to the higher planets, and sometimes they're coming down, and countless, infinite numbers of living beings. And occasionally, one is fortunate, Kona Bhagavan Jiva, in the midst of all this wandering, a soul is blessed to meet with Guru Krishna Prasade, to get the special blessing of Guru and Krishna. The two are inseparable. That somehow or other we come in contact with this special mercy. And as a result, Bhakti Lata Beach, the seed of the creeper of devotion, is planted in the heart. So it's an inconceivable thing. I often used to wonder, how is it, that some people have this blessing and some don't? What is it? And once when Prabhupada was sitting on the lawn at the manor, and I was fortunate to be there, there was a few of us sitting around, and one devotee asked Prabhupada, we know that Lord Chaitanya's mercy is causeless, but somehow or another, we've received this causeless mercy. How is it that some people get it and some people don't? And Prabhupada replied, Krishna likes you. Simply Krishna likes you. So somehow it's causeless. It's just by the blessing of the Lord we get this opportunity. And the topic here, is the question of finding an authentic teacher, finding a true guru. So it's just a blessing. And the thought that often occurs to me, and I think now I want to see you all again. Now what do?
You click the unshare. You should click the share button again so it unshares it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm slowly learning, so now I can see you all again. So it's a thought that often occurs to me. Well, first of all, what an amazing blessing that somehow or another brought me all those years ago to very place in Holborn, and where I met the devotees and was brought to meet Prabhupada. But the thought also occurs to me, what about those who were not around at that time? For whatever reason, maybe they were around, but they didn't find out about Prabhupada, or some, who came later, who were born into this world after Prabhupada had gone, and so on. Whatever it is, they didn't get the chance to meet with Prabhupada. So what becomes of them if it's so important? And, I suppose there's many ways to look at this, but what Prabhupada speaks about here is that he speaks about, the association of the devotees, and how, he established a society filled with all different kinds of activities. And once we start to become involved with the society, actually we are in the company of Prabhupada. Of course, if I'm in the company of Prabhupada, that means also I'm in the company of Rūpa Gosvāmī, for example, or Sanatana Gosvāmī, who was Rupa's older brother and who gave us many extraordinary teachings, or Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Prabhupada's great grand spiritual master, who really in the modern age he inaugurated the Krishna consciousness movement, and he wrote many books. So by being in contact with any sort of genuine follower of Prabhupada, I'm also in contact with Prabhupada and with Bhaktivinoda Thakur, with Sanatana Gosvāmī, with Rūpa Gosvāmī, and of course Lord Chaitanya. And it all goes back to the Srimad Bhagavatam, this amazing compilation of transcendental wisdom, which is alive, and we can merge ourselves, we can immerse, it's perfectly possible to immerse myself in the pages of these books. So Prabhupada, one of the things Prabhupada talks about in his explanation, which we're going to get to, he says that enthusiasm means to be active. And I remember there were always, some devotees when I lived in the ashram who were mainly attracted by reading. And there were one or two, they just wanted to sit and read. And Prabhupada always said, don't disturb them. There would be complaints would come. Oh, this person is not doing any service. They just want to sit and read all the time. And Prabhupada said, no, that's the best. So there were one particular man I'm remembering, he used to sit on the landing outside Prabhupada's room. So whenever Prabhupada would come out, there he would be reading the Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada was very pleased with that. He really appreciated this, because this is how we can associate with Prabhupada and the whole chain of devotees. We don't have to physically be in their company. So I just wanted to, so now, again, I want to say to you, if anyone has anything they want to share about that.
We've had a few questions, Ranchor Prabhu.
Okay.
On the chat, I can read them out to you.
All right. Well, before I'd love to hear, are there any that in relation to this topic of the connection, with the Guru, first of all?
There were a few questions before that about abandoning the association of non-devotees, and I think there's one or two on the topic of Guru, which I can give to you first.
Okay, let's go with the Guru first, and then we'll. That's great, because these are such profound things to discuss. Yeah, tell me that question.
Okay, so Lucy Brown had the question: how do we know the difference between a true guru and a false guru?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to quote Prabhupada because that'll get me out of this one. Once in his room at the manor, I was there. Prabhupada said, "The true guru is the one who says, surrender to Krishna." He doesn't say surrender to me. The true guru says, surrender to Krishna. So I'm aware that, there are many teachers around, and on the internet, of course, you can find endless numbers of people posing as teachers. So the one who says, follow me, do what I say, let me teach you, is not the one. It's the one who says, follow Krishna, surrender to Krishna, hear Krishna's teaching. That is the genuine teacher. That's what Prabhupada said. Okay, Lucy, does that help?
Yeah, we got a comment from Lucy Mataji saying, yes, thank you, Ranchor Prabhu.
Okay, good. All right, another one.
Rachna Mataji was asking, I've just starting my journey and would like to know where to start. I tried to read the Bhagavad Gita, but my simple mind is not being able to comprehend the depths of it. Please help and guide me to initiate me on this journey.
Yeah, very practical. By practicing chanting. Have you got japa beads, Rachna? If you have japa beads, practice with the japa beads. Even if you can't manage to sit for long, but try to sit, just do one round and build up from there, gradually sort of increase it, because it is through chanting that the heart starts to open. And what I would add to that is to be in the company of others who chant. That's the company that we seek, those who are attached to the name of God.
Rachna Mataji is asking, what do I chant?
Oh, the Hare Krishna mantra, the name of God. The name of God. Actually, in the Bhagavatam, the Bhagavatam opens telling us all the drawbacks of this age of Kali, what a difficult age it is. But then it says, there is one process that will rescue you from all of that. And that is, the Bhagavatam simply says, Nam. At that point in the Bhagavatam, it doesn't say, Nam, of course, is the Sanskrit word for name. It's one of those words that translates directly into the English language. So it doesn't tell us which name at that point. It simply says Nam. So, Rachna, if you can somehow find any name of God, that is, a name of God, which you feel some connection with. And Lord Chaitanya is very clear on this. He says, all your names are invested with all your potencies. He doesn't say it must be this name or that name. But if you have no alternative name, then I suggest the name of Krishna. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. We have another question from Kelly Hendrick Mataji. She's asking, just going on the questions that are about the Guru topic.
Yes.
She's asking, did you find it easy to surrender to Guru?
Oh, I thought it was going to be easy, but it's actually much harder than I thought. It's a lifetime's work. When the morning after I moved into the temple, I got my friend, he became my best friend of all, Tribhuvanath, who's no longer with us now. I got him to shave my head. And so as he was shaving my head, I said to him, "Oh, it's so wonderful to be surrendered at last." To which he said, he laughed. He said, "Surrender's not that simple." So in the beginning, of course, with Prabhupada, it was very obvious to see that he was such a wonderful divine being. And so in the beginning, Krishna helps us, to begin the process of surrender. He gives us some taste. But as time passes, we may have to do work. We've got to do work. And as you know, sometimes it's the difficult things in life that can be most rewarding. So in the course of a lifetime's journey, there will be times of struggle. But if I can keep returning to Nam, then I will be encouraged, and also the company of devotees, sadhu sangha. Thank you for the question.
We had another question on the topic from Jigna Chauhan, and she was asking, should our focus be on Guru or on Krishna?
The two are inseparable. There's no difference. As I said, the true Guru wants me to surrender to Krishna. And so you can't separate Krishna from his devotees. Equally, both.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Prabhu. There's just a few questions regarding abandoning the association of non-devotees. How do we apply this practically in a world where we are forced to associate with non-devotees, such as family or work colleagues, and where it may not be possible to live in an ashram or go to the temple every day?
Yeah. Big topic, big question. In his explanation for this verse, Prabhupada addresses this a little bit, but it may not be helpful in the context of your question. He says, spend your time with devotees, and that's the best way to avoid the undesirable company. Of course, it is true that in the present day and age, there's all kinds of ways, such as what we're doing now, you can spend a bit of time. It's not the same as being physically in one another's company, is it? But we can get a bit of one another's energies this way. We can associate a little bit. But if I understand you, if I'm going to work every day and the people who are around me, they're not, they have no understanding of Krishna consciousness, my gosh, it's really hard. I really have no advice on that actually, because other than, you know, wherever the opportunity arises, to find ways of connecting. Even if you could just find one person, perhaps you can find one person who's a friend, and the two of you can spend a bit of time. That can be all it needs. You know, the magic of association is so great that it doesn't require that I'm in a large company. You know, it can just be one, or if I'm really lucky, there might be two, and that can make three of us. You know, which is a great little number. And try to find a time and a place where regularly you can meet up. And the rest of the time, there was this one lovely instruction that Lord Chaitanya gave to, I think he gave it to Raghunath. Raghunath, when he was a young man, his father was very wealthy, and his father, you know, took complete control of his son. Raghunath wanted to just devote himself entirely to Krishna. He wanted to run away and be with Lord Chaitanya, but his father put him under guard, and he found a very beautiful wife, and he gave him a lovely house, and Raghunath couldn't get away. So one day he managed to somehow get permission with a group of men guarding him to go and have and sit at Lord Chaitanya's feet. And he said to him, I just want to come and be with you. So you know what Lord Chaitanya told him? He said, for now, just be patient. And he said, be like, actually he may have said this to, I'm thinking he may have said this to Rupa and Sanatan. I might be confusing too, but anyway, he said, be like a wife who has a secret lover. And because she does not want her husband to suspect, right, she serves him even more attentively so that he won't suspect that actually her mind is completely elsewhere. So while I'm, you know, working in my office or side by side, people who have no concept of Krishna and so on, this is the advice, that let me attend with care and attention to what it is I'm required to do. But meanwhile, all along, my heart is somewhere else. And that is actually, you know, Krishna consciousness in the larger sense, that all of us, for better or worse, we are held within these material bodies, and we have so many requirements made upon us in this world, even those who are in ashrams, to be fair. They also have to deal with so many issues. But in my heart of hearts, let me simply pray to Krishna that, Krishna, I just belong to you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay.
There was another question a bit earlier on by Himani Mataji about, in what sense do you mean by unmotivated devotional service? I think you'd mentioned unmotivated devotional service.
Yeah, okay. Well, now, in response to that question, I'm going to move us along a bit, because it relates to, in his commentary here, Prabhupada has said, you know, we need to act under the guidance, the instruction of a guru. And he says, in all phases of life, one has to perform devotional activities under the guidance of the spiritual master in order to attain perfection in bhakti yoga. But then he says, very interestingly and meaningfully, he says, it is not that one has to confine or narrow one's activities. So, Padmanabh, can you just repeat that question again? Because I know it relates to this. Padmanabh?
Sure, I'll just quickly have a look for it again. Yeah, so in what sense do you mean by unmotivated devotional service?
Right, yeah. Okay. So devotional service, Prabhupada says, you know, it's not that we want to become narrow and just do, I don't know, what we're told we must do. Prabhupada says Krishna is all-pervading. Nothing is independent of Krishna. And so what I wish to say is, you know, we will find inspiration in order to become selfless in my service. I have to find fulfillment in my service. I have to really get satisfaction and enjoyment and pleasure from my service. And of course, the basic activities of Krishna consciousness are very enjoyable: singing and dancing, feasting, you know, seeing the beautiful deities, being with devotees. And it's okay to enjoy those things. And in this way, that, you know, all those other, if I am to be unmotivated, it means my desires must be satisfied. My need to be happy, my need to be free from anxiety. All of this comes from immersing myself, as Rupa Gosvāmī said in this verse, tat tat karma pravartanat. All kinds of activities. Find something. There are so many things I can do. And I observed amongst the community of devotees, people do find wonderful ways to occupy themselves. You know, somebody has a camera and likes to use their camera. So they can use their camera to photograph Krishna and Krishna's devotees. Somebody else likes to dig the garden and they can produce vegetables and fruits for Krishna. Somebody likes to read, somebody likes to cook. We all have you know, things we like to do. So Prabhupada said to us once, I remember it struck me very much at a very place I was listening to him giving his talk, and he said, arrange your life in such a way that you can always remember Krishna. Always remember Krishna through what you do. So find what it is that you enjoy doing and do that for Krishna. And gradually, you know, in the beginning, I may give a little bit to Krishna, and over time, I'll end up giving my life. That's the blessing. Yeah. So that's how we become unmotivated, by immersing ourselves in what we can do best for Krishna. Yeah. Okay. So Prabhupada goes on in this vein, you know, he's sort of saying it's not that there's only one way. You know, he's listed these 9 processes of devotional service. He's saying, but find something, anything, and use your skills, whatever you have, in the service of Krishna. Everything can be used, no matter what it is. And he gives the example of his dictaphone. And I was just hearing the story the other day. Gargamuni, in the early New York temple, he went out and he bought Prabhupada a dictaphone because it was getting hard for Prabhupada to type everything. And so Gargamuni bought this dictaphone. So Prabhupada uses the example of the dictaphone, and they were amazed, by the way, because Prabhupada didn't need any, you know, instruction how to use it. He just instantly knew how to use it, just intuitively. So he says, for example, at present, we are using a dictaphone. The materialist who invented this machine intended it for businessmen or writers of mundane subjects. He certainly didn't think of using it to dictate, using the dictaphone in God's service. But we are using this dictaphone to write Krishna conscious literature. So in this way, you know, we can use all kinds of things in Krishna's service. And that can make us enthusiastic and fulfill our desires. Yeah. So let me. How are we doing for time? Okay. I thought 2 hours was going to be a very long time because we started a bit late, but I realise there's way more. Is everyone okay? You're not falling asleep, I hope. All right. So enthusiasm. Prabhupada has a few words to say about enthusiasm, and basically he says, he defines enthusiasm as it means action. And action is rather one of the things I think distinguishes Krishna consciousness, the practice of Krishna consciousness, from many other paths that are around these days, is that there is the emphasis on doing things. Now, and I think the reason why that sort of sets it somewhat apart is because if you don't have faith in a personal God, then what happens is, you are tend to be drawn to silence. This idea of just merging myself and losing my individuality. But in Krishna consciousness, we have this wonderful vision of God as being my personal friend, and for whom I can do things. And Krishna puts it so simply in the Gita. He just says, offer me a leaf or a fruit or a flower. Whatever you do, you can offer to me. Even your hardship, your austerities, you can also offer to me. So, for example, if I experience some ill health, I'm not feeling well, amazingly, I can even offer that to Krishna. And Krishna will be there with me in my discomfort as well. Everything can be offered to to Krishna. So this idea of activity, this is the teaching of the Gita. Whatever I'm doing, I can offer it to Krishna in all these different ways. And there's no limit, because Krishna is in everything, just as we were saying. So Prabhupada rounds off his discussion of enthusiasm by saying that endeavor executed with intelligence in Krishna consciousness, this is enthusiasm. Use my intelligence. Krishna is my intelligence. Krishna is in every one of us. Krishna's in our heart, and he gives us intelligence. So use my intelligence and seek guidance from the Guru, but also from Krishna, to be active. And he rounds it off by saying, practical action in the foreground of spiritual life. That is the essence of enthusiasm. So then he goes on to talk about patience and confidence, and these two really, they go together, because he gives the example, his own example. This Krishna consciousness movement was started single-handedly, and in the beginning there was no response. But because we continued to execute our devotional activities with patience, gradually people began to understand the importance of this movement. So if I know that what I'm doing is meaningful, even though I may not immediately feel the reward, it may not come straight away, but let me be patient. As Prabhupada advised Narayan, it may take some time. 50 years ago. And at the same time, confidence. And Prabhupada gives this wonderful example of the young wife who immediately wants a child. but he says she may have to be patient and to be confident that a child will come if you keep trying and you just be patient. And in course of time, the child will come. So we can't force, the results straight away. And some of you may have some thoughts about this, and if you do, I would very welcome your intervention or your comment or your question. That in the course of the practice of devotion, life moves on, and sometimes I may get excitement and wonderful rewards, and sometimes I may just have to keep being patient and being confident that in the end, success is guaranteed. So Prabhupada says, you can't make the sun rise in the middle of the night. You have to wait till dawn. And when dawn comes, the sun will come. Be assured, it will come. We can be absolutely assured of Krishna is with us all the way. So that's the nature of this world, that things do take time. We don't always get the instant result. But we can rest assured, Prabhupada says, he quotes a verse about, Krishna will surely protect me. Krishna protects his devotees. I don't need to fear. By doing this simple practice, there may be no immediate apparent reward. But I think for a lot of us, there is a reward, and that's why we carry on. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on this, any comments. I'd be very happy to hear them. Is there a way you can put your hand up on this machine? Anyway, in this program, anyone who wants to say something, they can stick a hand up. And whilst I'm being patient, I have this confidence that Krishna is there all the time. Krishna is with me and protecting me. Yeah, so then comes that's the third confidence, let's see, enthusiasm, patience and confidence. And then comes this asat sangha, tyaga, abandoning the association of those who are not truthful, asat, those who are not truthful. And gradually, in the beginning, we may have to spend time with these people, as I was saying earlier, but in a conscientious way, doing as best I can, and praying to Krishna, that Krishna, I just want to be yours. And gradually, Krishna will release us. It may take time, but he will release us from these entanglements. Life itself will do that for us as well. And we can try to spend more and more time sato vrite, with the ones who are truthful. Sato vrite. Prabhupada translates it as, following the Acharya. But I want to expand on that and just say anyone who has faith in Krishna, who has faith in Krishna's teacher, in Prabhupada, let me find those people. And actually, if truth be told, nothing else really matters. Prabhupada actually says, become callous about all the other stuff. It's in the end, we know that no matter how hard I work in this world, I will never get secure happiness or reward. Even the most dedicated people, it gets taken away. So it's that's the meaning of faith in Krishna consciousness is believing that if I simply continue with this practice, everything will come far beyond my furthest dreams. Whereas the more time I devote to the service of the things of this world, the more disappointed, unfortunately, I will eventually become. So yes, Prabhupada ends his closing comments. He uses this phrase, become callous. And he quotes a verse which I think is in my collection that I want to share with you. It's a verse from the Bhagavad Gita about night and day. So let's see if I can do this without too much complication here. Share screen. Okay. Share. Let's hope this works. So oh gosh, where is it? Yes, here we are. This is a verse that many of you will be familiar with. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about night and day. Yanisha Sarvabhutanam. Can everyone see this verse? Is it visible? Great, thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Sanisha, what is night? Sarvabhutanam, for all beings. Tasyam, that Jagarti Samyami is the time of awakening for Samyami, those who are self-controlled. Whereas Yasyam Jagrati Bhutani, when all beings wake up and become active, Shanisha Pashyato Mune. That is night. For Pashyato means the introspective person, the one who sees within. Mune, the Muni, the sage. So the more and more, that we discover and explore the world of Krishna consciousness, the more I start to see what is outside in relation to Krishna, which is done essentially by engaging the outer world, the body and the senses in the service of Krishna. But also, the more I start to experience the inner reality of Krishna. And this is what, in the course of his Upadeśāmṛta, his Nectar of Instruction, Rūpa Gosvāmī leads us towards the inner life as the 11 verses unfold. This inner life is ultimately what the process brings us to, awakening in another realm entirely. So that's what Krishna's referring to here. He says that, when the people of this world become so busy and active and excited about this, that, and the other, that's when the introspective sage, the devotee with the inner vision, turns inward. And what it is, what is interesting and active for Samyami, for the self-controlled, that's like night to the other people. So there are these two worlds coexisting. I acknowledge it can get very confusing for us, I find. To find that I'm living in a world where, very few people really understand the importance of surrendering to God. and the realization that God is a loving person is a very rare thing for most people. So let's just momentarily sing this verse together, and then I think that would be the opportunity for any closing questions or comments that any of you would like to share. So if anyone's got something, think about it now. So sing after me line by line. Yanisha Sarvamutana Yanisha Sarvamutana Chasyam Jagarti Chasyam Jagarti Yasyam Jagrati Jani
Yasyam Jagrati Bhutani
Shanisha Pasyato Shanisha Pasyato
Munahe
Yanisha Sarvamutana
Yanisha
Yanisha
Bhutani
Chasyam Jagarti
Tasyam
Jagarti Yasyam Jagrati Bhutani
Yasyam
Jagrati
Tani
Shanisha Pasyato
Yanisha Pasyato Munahe.
What is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-control. And the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sea. So we want to keep ourselves in the daytime of Krishna. And nighttime for us can also be a very good time to sit quietly and hear the sounds of Krishna's names. Or in the very early morning, some of you may like to go out, before the world gets going and take your beads with you. That's a wonderful thing to do. So now, that's kind of the journey for today. Now I think you can all see me now again. I can see you. Can you see me? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So as I say, as this was verse number 3 of the Nectar of Instruction, and as we go deeper into this beautiful poetic instruction of Rupa's, we're drawn deeper and deeper in. So actually I'd like to conclude by reading to you Prabhupada's very short preface. It's just less than a page, or it's about 2 pages, but it won't take long. The Krishna consciousness movement is conducted under the supervision of Srila Rūpa Gosvāmī. The Gaudiya Vaishnavas, or Bengali Vaishnavas, are mostly followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of whom the 6 Gosvāmīs of Vrindavan are direct disciples. Therefore, Srila Narottam Das Thakur has sung, Rupa Raghunatha Pade Haibe Akuti Kabe Hama Bhuja Bose Jugala Piriti. he says, when I am eager to understand the literature given by the Gosvāmīs, then I shall be able to understand the transcendental, loving affairs of Radha and Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in order to bestow upon human society the benediction of the science of Krishna. The most exalted of all the activities of Lord Krishna are his pastimes of conjugal love with the gopis. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in the mood of Srimati Radharani, the best of the gopis. So Prabhupada wants us to know right from the start that all of this that we're thinking about and trying to understand and practice is leading us into this transcendental realm of where the focus is the love of the gopis for Krishna. Therefore, he says, to understand the mission of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and follow in his footsteps, one must seriously follow the footsteps of the 6 Gosvāmīs, of whom Rupa Gosvāmī was the leader. And to guide our activities, he gave us this Upadeśāmṛta, Nectar of Instruction, to follow. Just as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left behind 8 verses, the 6 Shastaka, so Rupa gave us 11 verses, the Upadeśāmṛta, so that we may become pure Vaishnavas. So, that's the essence of the Nectar of Instruction, some of it, and I've said what I had to say. We could finish with some chanting, but if anyone has, any closing question or comment, then I'd be very happy to share that. Love to share it. Otherwise, we'll finish with some singing. There is a beautiful song which Prabhupada gave us. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Krishna, Jaya Vrindavan.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
There are a few questions. Sorry if we haven't had a chance to go to your question. There's been quite a lot of chat in the chat. A lot of devotees have been giving suggestions to Rachna Mataji, who was saying that she's very new to Krishna consciousness. So the devotees were reaching out and saying you can buy beads online, sharing their email addresses if she wants to keep in touch. That was very nice. We had one question from Channa Mataji. So she said, Hare Krishna, how do we know when we are making progress in Krishna consciousness and that our patience and persistence is paying off?
Well, of course, Prabhupada's answer to that was always, when I eat, my appetite gets satisfied. So that's how I know. That's how I know I'm making progress. But I could also say, in the context of everything we've been talking about, is with patience and with confidence, if I just keep practicing, don't worry if it doesn't feel like I'm making any progress. Believe me, you are. If you're chanting Krishna's name, if you're doing your best to avoid the obstacles to devotional service, doing the things that get in the way, just trust. Please place your faith in this wonderful process. You will not be let down. And Krishna also gives us his promise in the Gita that even if, Arjuna says, what happens if I lose my way? And Krishna said, that's okay, because whatever you have achieved is never lost. And in your next life, you carry on from wherever you got to. So there can never be any loss. Just keep it up.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Himani Mataji was asking, Srila Prabhupada says we should do whatever it takes to finish everything in this life and go back to Godhead in this life. Depending on our commitments and where we are in our respective journeys, what's the best way to follow his footsteps and instructions?
Gosh, well, it just sounds like you should carry on as you are, Himani. Prabhupada did, he gave this title to his magazine, Back Home, Back to Godhead. And he did say, don't stick around in this world. This world is not such a great place. Be determined to finish your journey in this lifetime. But he also added that if, however, you can't do the whole thing, then Krishna will help you to start again in the next life. And then when he said that, he then turned to, this is in one of his books, I think, Perfection of Yoga. He then turned to the devotees who are listening, and he said, so, now you have come here. This time, don't waste your opportunity. Make this your last. So, actually, many of us who are absorbed in Krishna consciousness, this is not the first time, but let's make it the last. And he said, failure is the pillar of success. So if in the past I have not achieved full success, this time I will.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji. I think we have a question from Ashta Gunesh Prabhu.
Yeah.
They raise their hand. Do you want to ask a question? Ashta? Okay, maybe not. There was a question by Mrinalini Radhika Mataji. Sorry, I missed that. Sorry for some of the questions might have been missed because, like I said, the chat, there was a lot going on. She was asking, I have old friends who I preach to, and I'm having some success with them. Should I abandon their association?
Oh, not at all. I mean, to be able to share in a positive way about Krishna, that's one of the best things we can do with our lives. So no, don't abandon people in that sense if they're able to. But if they don't want to hear about Krishna, then that may be the time to just respectfully say goodbye. Okay, well, let's end with, if it's okay, Prabhupada, shall we end now with a bit of chanting before we wrap up?
Okay, yes, Prabhuji. Thank you everyone for your questions, and sorry if we were not able to get to them. So yeah, Prabhuji is going to finish with some chanting. Very nice.
Jaya Radhe, Jaya Krishna, Jaya Vrindavan, 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 Shri Govinda Gopinath Madhan Mohan, Shri Govinda Gopinath Madhan Mohan, Shri Govinda Gopinath Madhan Mohan, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Krishna, Jaya Vrindavan, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare 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 Rama, Rama Hare. So I made a judgment. So thank you, everyone, for your company. Yeah, maybe we'll do this again. It's all kind of in the hands of Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhupada. And I'd appreciate any feedback from any of you, to send some messages, gather some messages.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much, Ranchor Prabhu. That was a really lovely seminar. Thank you for answering lots of questions. We've had some lots of nice comments on the chat, which I'll send to you.
And it's great that some of you had your cameras on, because that really helped. They to get a sense of your sadhu sangha. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji. So we'll end the seminar now. Thank you everyone for joining. We've got another seminar tomorrow at 12 noon with His Grace Keshavanand Prabhu. So he's going to be speaking on the Lord Chaitanya's Shikshashtakam prayers and going through the significance for the Gaudiya Vaishnavas in particular, what the Shikshashtakam means for them. Also some information about how the Shikshashtakam were written down by Srila Prabhupada Gosvāmī and how we can apply the teachings practically in our life. So please join us tomorrow from 12 noon till 3. Hare Krishna.
Oh, and I just want to say, I can see the name Tribhangananda at the bottom of my screen. Is that my beloved godbrother?
Yes, Tribhangananda Prabhu joined.
Thank you. That's wonderful too. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Ranchor Prabhu. Thank you so much for your kind association. You're very kind and always mature and thoughtful. I really appreciate that, Prabhu.
Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very nice, thank you. I can't see.
Krishna, thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Sure.
Haribol.